80% of adults say they stop caring about their birthdays by age 30. But psychologists suggest they aren't losing interest. They're losing the ability to be vulnerable. There is a specific silence that comes with your birthday when you navigate your 30s and 40s. You wake up, you check your phone, you might get a text from your mother or a generic notification from your bank, and then you just go to work. You tell your colleagues, "Oh, I don't really celebrate. It's just another day." But psychology suggests that underneath that casual shrug, something much deeper is happening. If you have stopped celebrating, it is rarely because you have stopped caring. In fact, the people who treat their birthday with the most indifference are often the ones who feel the weight of it the most heavily. We need to talk about why the brain decides to numb itself to this specific date, because what feels like apathy is actually a complex mix of emotional protection, psychological maturity, and a phenomenon known as temporal self-awareness. Let's break down exactly what is happening in your mind when you decide to turn the volume down on your own existence. The first layer of this is what psychologists call avoidant validation behavior. Think back to when you were 7 years old. The excitement you felt wasn't just about the cake or the presents. It was about the safety of being seen. For 24 hours, the world stopped and acknowledged you were here. It was external permission to take up space. But as we transition into adulthood, specifically that mid-career push where responsibilities compound, that dynamic inverts. We stop viewing attention as a reward and start viewing it as a risk. This is the green-purple dynamic of emotional risk. When you hope for a celebration and don't get it, the brain registers that as a social pain injury, lighting up the same neural pathways as physical pain. So, if you have spent years being the strong one, the responsible one, or the person who remembers everyone else's birthday but somehow gets overlooked on your own, your brain adapts. It learns a very specific lesson. Expectation leads to disappointment. Therefore, to protect you, your subconscious lowers the bar. It convinces you that you hate attention. It convinces you that parties are childish. This isn't a loss of joy. It is a gain in armor. By declaring it's just another day, you are preemptively deciding the outcome so that no one else can let you down. It's a control mechanism. However, there is a twist here that most people miss. While this starts as a defense mechanism, for many of you watching this, it has evolved into something else entirely. Something actually quite healthy, though it feels melancholy. It's called the shift from performative joy to self-concordant alignment. In our 20s, birthdays are often performative. We celebrate to prove we have friends, to prove we have a life, to create content for the social archive. But as you hit your 30s and 40s, that external noise starts to feel draining. You begin to crave alignment over applause. You might find that your ideal birthday now looks like a quiet coffee alone, a long drive, or simply not having to answer to anyone for 12 hours. This confuses the people around you. They try to push balloons and dinners on you, thinking they are helping, not realizing that for the introverted or exhausted adult, the greatest gift isn't a party, it's peace. If this resonates with you, you haven't given up on life. You have just realized that your joy is no longer dependent on a calendar date or a room full of people looking at you. That is a massive psychological milestone. It means your sense of self is stable enough to exist without a spotlight. But, and this is a massive but, we have to address the shadow side of this stability. Because even the most emotionally self-reliant adult still has a child inside them who is checking to see who remembered. This brings us to the concept of temporal self-awareness. Birthdays act as emotional mirrors. On any other day of the year, you can get lost in the routine. You can focus on the deadline, the kids, the mortgage, the emails. But a birthday forces you to stop and look at the timeline of your life. It forces you to measure the gap between who you are and who you thought you would be by this age. For many, this gap is uncomfortable. It brings up a subtle anxiety. Maybe you thought you'd be married by now. Maybe you thought you'd be wealthier or happier or living in a different city. When that day arrives, it shines a bright light on everything you haven't achieved yet. So, treating it like a normal day is a way to avoid the glare of that light. It's a way to keep the existential dread at bay. If you don't acknowledge the milestone, you don't have to acknowledge the passage of time. This is why you might feel a strange sense of relief the morning after your birthday. The pressure to evaluate your life has lifted, and you can go back to simply living it. But let's go deeper into the relational aspect, because this is where the ache usually lives. There is a paradox in emotional evolution. The The more independent and low maintenance you become, the harder it is for people to love you loudly. You have likely spent the last decade teaching people that you don't need anything. You say, I'm fine, don't worry about me. I don't need gifts. You have trained the world to treat you as self-sufficient, and the world listened. Now, on your birthday, when you receive that silence you asked for, it feels heavy, not because you want a parade, but because you want to know that if you did need someone, they would be there. Psychologists link this to earned secure attachment. When you grow up in an environment where your needs were perhaps seen as inconvenient, you learn to suppress them. You become the easy friend, low maintenance partner. But suppression isn't the same as absence. The desire to be seen is a fundamental human need, right next to food and shelter. When you starve that need for 364 days a year, it gets hungry on the 365th. So, when someone treats their birthday like a normal day, they are often running a silent test. They are waiting to see who will break through the I don't care barrier. They are waiting to see who knows them well enough to know that I don't want anything actually means I don't want to have to ask. It is the difference between wanting attention and wanting intention. Attention is loud. It's the balloons and the singing waiters. Intention is quiet. It's the specific text message that references a joke from 3 months ago. It's the person who calls you not because Facebook reminded them, but because they know what day it is. If you are the person who brushes off your birthday, you are likely craving intention, not attention. And because our culture doesn't know how to distinguish between the two, you choose nothing. You choose safety. So, what do we do with this? If you are nodding along to this, feeling that familiar mix of pride in your independence and sadness in your isolation, how do you navigate the next birthday? First, validation. You need to accept that it is okay to feel two opposing things at once. You can be grateful for your life and still mourn the passage of time. You can be a strong, independent adult and still wish someone would bring you a cupcake without you asking. You can prefer solitude and still feel lonely. This is not hypocrisy. It is complexity. There is a concept called integration that we should aim for. Instead of swinging between total denial, it's just a Tuesday, and high expectation, everyone must celebrate me. We find a middle ground. We redefine what celebration looks like for the person you are now, not the child you were. Maybe celebration is no longer about accumulation, getting gifts, getting drunk, getting loud. Maybe celebration is about recognition. It is about taking that day to recognize yourself. This sounds abstract, so let's make it practical. The people who report the highest levels of satisfaction with their birthdays in their 40s are not the ones throwing the biggest parties. They are the ones practicing ritualistic self-concordance. They take the day off work, not to party, but to rest. They buy themselves the thing they actually want, rather than waiting for someone else to guess it. They turn off their phone notifications so they aren't performing gratitude for 200 acquaintances on LinkedIn. And instead, they have dinner with the two people who actually know the color of their eyes. They take control of the narrative. Because here is the hard truth. If you leave your joy in the hands of others, you will often be disappointed. Not because people are cruel, but because they are busy. They are fighting their own battles with time and expectation. When you treat your birthday like a normal day as a defense mechanism, you are shrinking. But when you treat it as a normal day, because you have found peace in the ordinary, you are expanding. The difference is in the intention. Are you hiding or are you resting? If you are hiding, I want you to try something brave next year. You don't have to throw a party, but I want you to tell one person, just one, that the day matters to you. Drop the armor for 5 minutes. Say, I'm feeling a bit reflective today. You might be surprised by how much people want to show up for you if you give them the map. And if you are resting, if you have genuinely found that the quiet day is your preference, then lean into that without guilt. Society tells us that silence is sad. Marketing tells us that if we aren't being celebrated loudly, we aren't loved. That is a lie designed to sell greeting cards. Some of the most profound moments of gratitude happen in complete silence. There is a specific dignity in looking at your life exactly as it is and nodding at it in saying, I am here. I survived another year. I am carrying my grief and my joy equally. That doesn't require a balloon. It requires courage. Ultimately, the psychology of the normal day birthday is a story of transition. It is the transition from needing the world to tell you that you matter to knowing it for yourself. But let's be clear about one final thing. Even if you have reached that level of enlightenment, even if you are the master of your own validation, it is okay to let the light in if it comes. If someone remembers, let them. If someone buys you a coffee, drink it. If someone sends you a paragraph of text telling you why they love you, read it twice. You don't have to deflect it to be humble. You don't have to brush it off to be strong. Receiving love requires just as much strength as giving it. For those of you who have spent your life being the giver, the listener, the rock, your birthday is the one moment the universe tries to balance the scales. Don't block it, because underneath the "I don't care," the "it's fine," and the "it's just another day," you are still the protagonist of your own life. And even the most stoic protagonist deserves a chapter where the plot slows down, the background noise fades, and they are simply allowed to be. So, if your birthday is coming up, or if it just passed and you felt that familiar hollow ache, know this: you are not ungrateful. You are not broken. You are simply evolving. You are learning that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. And if you can wake up on that Tuesday, look in the mirror, and genuinely like the person looking back, then you have celebrated in the only way that actually counts. That is not just another day. That is a victory. If this perspective shifted something for you, or if you felt that specific birthday heaviness, you aren't alone in it. I'm curious, do you feel more relief or more sadness when your birthday is over? Let me know in the comments. I read them to understand where you're coming from. It is important to remember that this avoidant tendency doesn't just show up on birthdays. It bleeds into how we handle promotions, compliments, and help. We shrink to avoid the burden of being seen. But the cost of that shrinking is that we eventually forget how to take up space. We start to believe our own lie, that we don't need anything. And that is a dangerous place to live, because it leads to burnout. It leads to a specific kind of exhaustion where you are tired not from doing too much, but from receiving too little. The antidote is small doses of vulnerability. Next time your birthday rolls around, try treating it not as a normal day and not as a spectacle, but as a checkpoint. A checkpoint is neutral. It is simply a place to pause, refuel, and check your map. Ask yourself, am I living the life I want, or just the one I fell into? Am I keeping people at a distance to feel safe? Am I allowing myself to enjoy things without analyzing them to death? If you can use the day for that, it becomes a tool rather than a trigger. And for the love of everything, if you are the person who remembers everyone else's dates, if you are the archivist of your family or friend group, release yourself from the duty of having to facilitate your own joy. It is okay to do nothing, but make sure you are choosing nothing because it feels full, not because it feels safe. There is a massive difference between the solitude you choose and the isolation you settle for. If you found yourself nodding at this description of the strong, independent, but quietly lonely archetype, you might want to explore why you built that armor in the first place. We often construct these defenses in childhood, but they become cages in adulthood. Your birthday is just the symbol. The reality is the other 364 days where you might be holding your breath. So, here is your permission slip. Next year, you can turn off your phone. You can tell everyone you're busy. You can treat it like a normal Tuesday. But do one thing for me. Buy the good coffee. Take the long route home. And for 10 seconds, just 10, feel proud of the person who has survived 100% of their bad days to get here. Because that person, they are worth celebrating, even quietly. If you want to understand more about why we push people away when we actually want to be seen, I've put together a deep dive on hyper-independence as a trauma response right here. It explains the other side of this coin. Click that, and I'll see you there.